You know what? We're going to dive into Lions training camp going on here today, Wednesday. We've got some information about a few new injuries, a couple updates on CJ, a couple updates on other players as well. And we're going to talk about the rise of the quarterback position, some wide receivers that might be just making an impact on the NFL, let alone the Detroit Lions' future. We're going to talk about all that and maybe just a little bit more in today's Lions Talk Live. Greetings and salutations to everybody out there in YouTube land. I'm your host once again, Dan Thornton. I want to thank you all for tuning in to this Lions Talk Live Wednesday. We're going to dive in a little bit to some training camp news. As we're all probably aware, things are underway for most teams in the NFL, and the Detroit Lions are no exception. Sunday, we saw that the veterans reported, and obviously last week, a week ago actually today, the rookies came into town. So expectations are through the roof for this team. I think we're all aware of the hype train, whether you're watching it on YouTube, NFL Network, wherever it may be. It doesn't seem like you can avoid talking about the Detroit Lions for very long. And that's a good thing. Lions fans, I'm sure we can all talk about how the last 50 years have not been great for this franchise. I've been watching the Lions since the late 1970s, I guess probably from the first time my dad and one of my brothers took me to Pontiac Silverdome when I was young, and man, I was blown away by him and been a fan ever since. So anybody who's a Lions fan watching this understands last year's finish was off the charts, better than anybody would have anticipated when the team was 1-6. But now, as we're talking about coming up to this season, you can see how the team is maturing. You can see leadership changes from players, coaching staff, everybody stepping up, owning their roles to do what they can to help push this team to those high expectations. Let's talk about Jared Goff for a second. The quarterback who was cast out, as we all know, from Los Angeles with the Rams, sent away seemingly to end his career and be a foregone conclusion or a part of a trade to get Matthew Stafford. Goff, to his defense, shook off a rough first half of his initial season with Lions to have a great ending and then a phenomenal season a year ago. But so far in training camp, let's talk about how he's doing. He's stepping up with leadership roles. He was the first person from Detroit to call Mims when he was acquired and talk to the receiver about things, expectations, what he wants to do to try to help him succeed. Because I think Goff knows as more and more of the skill position players find success, he will have success. That's what good leaders do. They reach out, they galvanize players, they bring them all together, not just being relying on coaching staff to give all the rah-rah speeches or set the tone and expectations. But we're seeing it with more and more players. Some good news in training camp. Goff's been sharp. We are hearing left and right about this improved secondary. We know in the OTAs, Goff had some struggles against the new secondary and defense. But that doesn't seem to be the case now. Goff seems to be setting the tone early and often. Yesterday, on Tuesday, we're told he didn't even throw an incomplete pass into the final couple moments of camp when they were winding some things down and trying a few new scripts or plays. And he threw a couple of incompletions to end yesterday. But today, Wednesday, so far, it sounds like he's again continuing the trend of being sharp, precise, throwing the deep ball with some accuracy. I know something that he did throughout the year a season ago that improved over time. Looks like Goff's trying to make that a part of the game, and the weapons he has on offense help facilitate more and more deep shots than perhaps we did a year ago. So anyways, with that being said, we're also hearing about St. Brown. Brown, as I'm sure every Lions fan knows, has a chip on his shoulder. He can recite every wide receiver that was drafted prior to him coming to the Lions, in his rookie year through the draft. If you talk about the Detroit Lions, I think you're starting to see a common thread with a lot of the players they're picking up that are finding success. They all have beef. They all have a reason to prove themselves. That's why if you watched Micro Mike yesterday on Lions Nation Unite, I said I think Mims has a chance to be a breakout performer for this team. He's got something to prove. He's got a career to save, and I think he's going to have a true NFL quarterback, high level, for the first time in his career in the NFL. So pairing him with some of the other weapons we're hearing about how Gibbs is destroying the defense. Gibbs, I know, draft day, a lot of people, including myself at first, when he was announced he was drafted, a little bit of an eyebrow raise. But I think by the end of that first round of the draft, when we all had time to kind of look into this guy, how the Lions might use him, and then it was confirmed how they're going to use him, looks like the Lions and Brand Holmes once again knew exactly what they were doing and found other people sleeping. This kid's got wheels. He's got skills. He's got breakaway ability. He can run routes. He can take the ball up the middle. He's going to be a real pain for, I think, any defense lining up against the Lions offense to account for. Like we've talked about in other Lions Talk Lives, who are you going to have account for him on D? If you're not playing zone, that means you're going to have to either put a corner, a safety, or a backer on him. And that's going to give our OC and the entire offense, let's be honest, a lot of flexibility in what they can do. Motion them out wide, bring them in, line them up behind a halfback, a fullback, whatever they may want to do. Maybe bring in an extra offensive lineman to block for them. The point is Ben Johnson and co are going to be able to dictate what they want to do on offense. Think about this as well. That offense, with you talking about the speed of Jameson Williams, Mims, and then, of course, Gibbs, and Laporta, who we're hearing more and more, this kid isn't playing like a rookie. He's playing to play at a high level now, today. It's going to be a lot of pressure. And, don't forget about St. Brown, one of the vocal leaders stepping up. We're hearing about how he's destroying defenses, especially today, Wednesday. But as great of news as all that is, let's also talk about some of the stuff that's not so great, unfortunately. We're here today, Wednesday, that Vaitai was not able to go on practice today. Undisclosed injury. We'll wait and see perhaps what it is. Hopefully it's nothing serious, because I think we can all agree between him and Glasgow, we're going to have pretty good depth on the O-line. One of them's going to start, and the other one's going to be a more than capable backup. I'm hoping Vaitai can overcome the injuries of the last 2 years and provide some much-needed depth and power in the run game. So we'll see, and hopefully it's not a big deal. In case you were sleeping under a rock, though, for the last few days, you probably were aware that the Lions did receive a scare the second day of training camp when C.J. Gardner-Johnson was carted off the field. Non-contact related injury, and usually, I'm sure we all agree, when that happens to any kind of athlete, the first thing that pops in somebody's mind is that something happened to a knee. MRIs and other tests revealed, though, that the knee's fine, no structural damage whatsoever. So Gardner-Johnson looks like he's just going to miss a couple days of practice. Same with Jameson Williams. He was out yesterday, limited, I'd say would be a good term for it today. We'll see what happens, but both men, probably no rush to get them back on the field. In fact, if the Lions didn't want to really push them for a while, I don't think too many fans are going to have a problem with it, nor the coaches. But it is what it is. We'll see what happens. But good news, none of these injuries appear to be of a serious nature. I do want to also give a shout out to Aiden Hutchinson. Hutchinson, as you're probably all aware, but if not, let me fill you in. Yesterday, the NFL announced their top 100, or at least part of the top 100, for the upcoming season. Hutchinson came in, as you probably are aware, see it on the screen, at number 88. If you haven't seen the highlight video released by the NFL Network, go ahead and type it in, search it on YouTube, and I'm sure you'll find it. But it's interesting to me how the players in the video all describe Hutchinson. From other teams, the way they listed him, the way they talked about him, to have a second-year player, let alone a Detroit Lion, make it up to number 88, I think that's real telling. And it'll be interesting when they release the next couple waves of the top 100 to reveal the entire group, if any other Lions make it. I got to believe we're going to see Penei Sewell, perhaps St. Brown, make that list as well. We already talked about Gardner-Johnson and his injury, plus a couple of the other players, but let's also talk about what I want to see out of the rest of this training camp. And that's going to be this. You've got a bunch of new players on the defense. You got to get them all in the same, plan. You got to get them all pointing in the same direction. You got to make sure everybody's ready for opening day. One of the things that I will say from my coaching experience, when you take a bunch of new people and put them into schemes, you got to get them reps to make sure they're all aware of what they need to do. I do believe the Lions have an opportunity to have a magical season. In fact, if you go through the archives of videos on Lions Talk Live, you're going to see that I predicted the Lions will make the Super Bowl this year. I didn't say they'd win it, but I think when we were 1-4 a year ago, I put together a video and said, hey, here's what I see happening. Obviously, they had a great finish to last year. That kind of helps support my conclusions. But I do believe if the Lions are not like most in the NFL, where they almost treat the first regular season game as a preseason game, if they get their D some reps, and yes, you run the risk of injury. I'm not saying a ton of reps, but can you get the starting D, maybe the first preseason game, a quarter, maybe the second preseason game, half of the first quarter? I would say this: you want to do everything you can to make sure your defense comes out and plays as close to its potential game number one as you can. Same with the offense. I get injuries are a risk, but I'll put it to you this way: if the Lions had taken that approach last year, do we win against Philadelphia? My conclusion is yes. You would have taken advantage of that game, and that one game would have got you into the playoffs a season ago. Crazy it is to look at that and rewrite some history, but it's a game of inches, and especially unlike most other leagues, the NFL, one game here, one game there, or a tie, as we are all aware, can push you in or out of the playoffs. The Lions really want to make a run to not only win the division, but get a home field playoff game, get seeding. I wouldn't leave any game up for chance. I would do everything I can, especially with the depth this team has. We're all probably aware that the Lions have talked about bringing in Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater, why would you do that? Well, my opinion, the Lions, from coaching to players, the front office, see this team as a potential Super Bowl contender. There's very few holes on the team. You could say backup quarterback, maybe a little bit of depth at the defensive line, in the interior defensive line, but that's really about it. They've got a window of opportunity probably this year and next year to really make a push before some salary caps from some of these star rookie players of the last few seasons come into play. Here's my thought: go get Bridgewater. As great as we'd all like to say Nate Sudfeld is, or Hendon Hooker, I'm probably going to roll with somebody with some veteran experience, some starting experience, playoff experience, whatever it is. Bridgewater fits that bill. If something happens to Goff and he goes out for 1, 2, 6 games, would you rather roll with Teddy Bridgewater, Nate Sudfeld, or still injured, Hendon Hooker? You need to get wins in those situations and buy yourself some time until your starter returns. And it's my anticipation, if the Lions, Brand Holmes, Campbell, whoever, can get a player of that ability to come in, then we bought ourselves some insurance in case the unthinkable happens. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Just want to chime in some thoughts. Again, if you haven't seen, Aiden Hutchinson did make the top 100 players list. I do think there will be 1 or 2 more Lions out there. We're all going to have to pay attention and see what happens. One other thing I'll throw at you: it's been named that James Houston is not a starting linebacker for the Lions defense currently. But I'm going to say this to you real quick. I think he's going to be a starter in one capacity or another come opening day, and I do think he's going to have a monster season. We'll see what shakes out, but I do think Aaron Glenn is on the hot seat a little bit with all the weapons he now has. And I think he's going to throw everything at opposing quarterbacks. He's going to not play as vanilla on defense as the Lions did last year. And I get they had to do it because, during that 1-6 start, things were not going well. After that, he shored some things up. He went with what he had to do. I think he's going to be able to do a lot more this season. Anyways, hope you all enjoy the rest of your Wednesdays. Take care, and we'll see you next time on Lions Talk Live.